All right, so if you guys could please welcome our next group, which will be discussing performance-enhancing drugs.
Good morning, my name is Lee. This is Skylar, Alan, Grace, Jason, and David, and our topic is performance-enhancing drugs. Performance-enhancing drugs are substances used to strengthen the mental and physical facilities of the individual. They have a long history ranging from the days of ancient Greece to World War II and the present. In ancient Greece, performance-enhancing drugs were used by Olympians to gain edge on their competitors until the year 393 AD, when pagan sports such as the Olympics were banned. Because there are a wide array of performance-enhancing drugs, we will only focus on amphetamines and anabolic steroids. Amphetamines were created in 1887, but their use was not found until the 1930s, which was also the same decade that anabolic steroids were created. Amphetamines were used to cure an array of maladies, while anabolic steroids were used to replace testosterone in the male body. Performance-enhancing drugs were used during World War II to improve soldiers' health and performance. After World War II, amphetamines were found to have euphoric effects and were widely abused. Today, they're still used in medical contexts, but are, of course, widely abused. After World War II, anabolic steroids were also abused, especially after the creation of the anabolic steroid we know today was created by American scientists to help American Olympians gain an edge on their competitors. By the late 80s and early 90s, stricter laws were put in place, making it harder to sell and possess performance-enhancing drugs. Today, anabolic steroids are in the middle of many athletic scandals, such as that of Lance Armstrong, who admitted to using human growth hormone, blood transfusions, testosterone, and other performance-enhancing drugs in an interview after the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency released 1,000 pages of evidence against him and his team of cyclists, causing him to lose his Tour de France title and 2002 bronze Olympic medal.
The U.S. federal government doesn't specifically take actions towards controlling performance-enhancing drugs. Instead, they have hearings in Congress and think about what actions that need to be taken to curb these usages. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, which does drug testing for the U.S. Olympic teams, is one of the agencies that many leagues, both amateur and professional, go to regulate their drug testing procedures. These tests are used to test for drugs like marijuana, amphetamines, and PCP, according to the National Institution on Drug Abuse. There have been many cases where athletes have been found using these drugs. An example would be Alex Rodriguez from the New York Yankees, who was banned from the MLB for 1 year after he was found using steroids. When he came back clean this year, he went out and hit a home run on his first swing. What he did was show that he did not need performance-enhancing drugs in order to do well in that game. Another example is after every horse race, the rider and the horse are subjected to urine and blood tests to make sure that neither one used drugs before the race. Though there isn't any specific percentage, approximately 35% of U.S. high schools have drug prevention education. With that, 20% of these schools have student drug testing policies. Those students are not subjected to take these tests in most cases, though. In the past decade, the usage of performance-enhancing drugs have decreased from 6.1% in 2003 to 4% in 2005. Despite this decrease in percentage, 65% of teenage users are willing to use pills or powder, including dietary supplements, in order to improve their body for athletic performance as a means to reach their goals in a short period of time. Despite why high schoolers or anyone in general are using these drugs, there are many severe side effects, which includes high blood pressure, heart problems, and psychiatric disorders.
So as you can see by this graph, the percentage of high school seniors who perceive the risks and dangers associated with abusing performance-enhancing drugs, such as anabolic steroids, has decreased since 1998. This means that nearly half of high school seniors believe that medically they're okay to abuse these drugs. In order to reverse this startling trend, we intend to launch an educational campaign targeting all high schools, freshmen through seniors, in order to educate them about the health risks associated with using performance-enhancing drugs. However, research shows that there is still a percentage of students that would continue to abuse these drugs, even with knowledge of the negative side effects. In order to counter this, we intend to lobby legislators in order to have them pass tighter restrictions on these drugs in order to make them far more difficult to obtain without a doctor's prescription. However, this raises still another issue. These drugs are legitimate medications, and therefore they need to be researched in order to still be around, in order to assist in treating illnesses and symptoms. We intend to launch research in order to determine new drugs that can perform the same effects and treat the same symptoms hopefully without the negative side effects. These three solutions comprise what we call the threefold plan, or REL. That's research, education, and legislation. These three solutions will require a large amount of funding, without which any possible solution would be incomplete. And high school seniors would continue to put their health and well-being at risk.
To address this issue, our group will use grant money to take the following actions. First, we will organize new programs that specifically target students. These programs will ensure that students have knowledge of these drugs and their abuses. We will also create programs and use social media to inform the public about these PEDs. Some of our money will go towards creating better drug testing. Until this drug testing may be created, we will increase the amount of schools that perform drug testing and the frequency that drug testing occurs. We will also invest some of our money towards lobbying to create new laws that will further restrict athletes from using these drugs. These laws will be stricter than laws that are currently put into action. The final use of our money will be to support research being done to find positive uses for these drugs in the medical environment. These actions are important because they provide many people with information about PEDs and then look for positive use for these drugs in the medical environment.
Because of the wide range of performance-enhancing drugs and how they can be both abused in improper situations and be quite helpful in actual medical situations, a simple one-step plan will not solve the problem. Instead, we propose taking a three-step plan, threefold plan, which we refer to as REL, to solve these problems. It focuses on targeting key areas of funding to solve many of the problems of abuse of performance-enhancing drugs. These key areas are research, education, and legislation. And for research, we propose putting forward $200,000. This will allow us to hire a pharmaceutical consultant who will, with information we provide him, propose a plan to pharmaceutical companies who may see a profit in developing new tests or alternate uses for already developed performance-enhancing drugs. This will greatly reduce the cost of developing a new test or use for a drug, as according to a study cited by the American scientists, it costs about $2.6 billion to develop a new test or drug. Secondly, we would like to launch an education campaign of a cost of $200,000. This will allow us, by hiring a teaching consultant, to develop a unit to be implemented into already federally mandated health studies for high schoolers. By implementing this unit, we plan to inform students of the negatives and the consequences for using performance-enhancing drugs when not properly prescribed. Further, we would like to launch a social media campaign that will employ viral marketing techniques to educate the general public about the abuse of performance-enhancing drugs and how it can negatively affect one's health. Finally, legislation for $300,000 will use a targeted lobbying campaign to ensure the passing of legislation which focuses on restricting performance-enhancing drug access without a proper prescription, and it will also focus on bills which aim to improve and implement drug programs and drug education programs into health classes within schools. Now, this will total out to about $700,000. We plan to receive funding from many different sources. Firstly, the Funding Our Future campaign will provide the basis for this, which will allow us to contact other organizations and launch a social media campaign to receive other donations, which will come from the public. Further, we may see public interest group funding from groups that are interested in reducing drug misuse. And finally, we are planning to receive funding from concerned organizations such as the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, World Anti-Doping Agency, and even the NIH.
In conclusion, there are three main reasons for our grant proposal. First, so we can further research performance-enhancing drugs and find new medical uses for them. Second, so we can educate the public on the misuse and danger of these drugs. And third, so we can persuade politicians to pass stricter laws that will prevent people from misusing these drugs. In the end, after putting into effect our threefold plan, we hope that it will better the community and perhaps save some lives. These are all excited.
Mr. B.
So, Celine, you mentioned that amphetamines were more tightly regulated because they had an addictive nature to them. Is that why these aren't regulated as closely as other drugs that you hear about, I guess, in the news a lot more? Is it just because they're like, it's not addicting, or is it because of the areas they're used in? Like, I'm not sure why these things, if they have the health, like harm, like if they do the harm they do, why aren't they regulated the same as a lot of other drugs that you hear about, like I guess a lot more in the news? Well, it's not a question just to you, but it's surprising that these aren't more highly regulated already. I feel like you hear about heroin and marijuana and cocaine and other things like that, and amphetamines, yes, you talked about that, but why aren't more people addressing this now otherwise?
One of the reasons for this is that performance-enhancing drugs are generally focused more towards an athletic or academic situation rather than just the general public, which by narrowing who it relates to, it generally isn't covered as much or isn't as popular in media, other outlets for information.
That makes sense.
In addition to what Jason was saying, there are a number of drugs that are used as performance-enhancing drugs that many people don't realize are used that way. For example, Adderall and Ritalin, which are used to treat ADHD and ADD, actually are used by college students to help them focus and cram for tests. And so many people don't realize that these do need further restrictions besides needing a doctor's prescription bottle.
All right. Other questions? All right, thanks, guys.